Death to Videodrome! Long live the new flesh! I'm Liam, he's Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. In the second part of our unofficial season of weird-ass 80s movies that are 83 minutes long, we look back at David Cronenberg's Canadian sci-fi body horror classic Videodrome. Another one of those deeply disturbing movies that feels all too pertinent in today's AI-driven, internet-obsessed society. This is a movie that has made the journey from box office bomb to cult classic and finally onto critical darling. Considered by many to be one of Cronenberg's finest works, has 1983's Videodrome stood the test of time, and how does it hold up for those experiencing it, just like us, for the first time more than 40 years after its original release? Now, Rob, this is a movie I've been meaning to watch for a long time. I'm not sure what I expected beyond the fact that I knew it was going to be weird. It was weirder than I expected.
I've seen it before, but oh my God.
My apologies, I said we hadn't seen it. My bad.
No, it's okay. I've seen it once before because I remember saying I saw Red Heat, but I never saw Red Heat. I know I've seen this before. The name sits like Videodrome I know about. But my God, I must not have watched it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I must not have taken anything in because I couldn't have told you, even though I know I've watched Videodrome, I couldn't have told you it was about like him finding snuff films or a weird six-pack vagina or anything like that. Like, it was completely off the cuff when I watched it. I didn't know what the fuck it was so odd. And there's a lot to catch into. What I do like is you've said. I'm changing the subject a little bit already. You said unofficial season of weird podcasts, weird films. How many unofficial seasons do we officially have on this thing? Because we keep doing this.
There are quite a few, but when I realized that this movie was also inexplicably 83 minutes long. Now, when we did Dead Heat last week, for those wondering what the fuck I'm talking about, last week we covered 1988's Dead Heat. Now, that film's 83 minutes long. And then you watch that film and you're like, yeah, this makes perfect sense that this film's 83 minutes long. This film has like 2 hours plus worth of content in it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it's been squeezed down to 83 minutes.
Well, there's no introduction of... Sorry. I apologize for that. There's no introduction of like James Woods, what he does. Usually you get the big scrolling, like as he's walking through the TV station. And, like, they don't even say what his TV station is. His TV station just seems to be some weird station that just cherry picks or picks the weirdest shit to put on TV because they can. Like, it took me a minute to realize that they had a pirate satellite dish that they were stealing shows from to put back on their station because apparently nobody gives a fuck in 1983. Like, it was nobody gives a fuck in Canada in 1983.
Yes,
like, it's so odd. Nobody gives a fuck about hygiene. His coffee pot was gross, dude. Like, above everything that's filmed that we're going to talk about, I couldn't get over his coffee pot on the stove. It was awful.
It's weird that you bring that up because that did cross my mind, the gross coffee pot, but I immediately forgot about that when he dipped his pizza crust into his coffee.
Yes, what the fuck? Like, we said we have a problem with people eating pizza on this podcast. It's like Stallone's Cobra comes to mind. But
no, it doesn't just come to mind. He is the high watermark and forever will. For those who haven't seen Cobra, by the way, he inexplicably at one point in the film, he's chilling at home and he has, like anyone else, they've got a pizza box. He takes the slice out and he cuts it with a pair of scissors as if it's the most normal thing in the world. And I don't even mean like he cuts the pizza into slices. He takes a slice, an already cut slice, and then cuts that slice in half with a pair of scissors. I have to bring it up because it's fucking bananas.
But I will say,
the
half you're thinking of, no, he doesn't cut it half lengthwise. He cuts it horizontally.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like that tells you just how mental it is. The fact that I'm talking about how weird what he does with the pizza crust is in this film, but then immediately I just go off on one about Cobra because it genuinely is amazing. Another batch of crazy film for a completely different reason, but. In terms of how crazy it is, I was trying to get my head around the sales pitch for this film because this is David Cronenberg's first mainstream movie, or at least the first mainstream movie with a mainstream budget. And so it was just over 5 million, which isn't a huge amount, but it's a relative amount for like 1983. It flopped pretty hard, but then you watch the film and you're just like, oh yeah, this was always going to flop. But I was like, so I'm going to make this movie about snuff films that give you a brain tumor and make you hallucinate really weird shit. Oh, and it's about the fear of technology, the nature of highly erotic content, the boundaries of good taste, the blurring lines between reality and illusion, and the ever-increasing impact of media manipulation. Oh, and it's going to be 83 minutes long. Oh, well, that sounds fucking awesome, Dave. Here's $5 billion. How the hell did this happen? I have no idea. Oh, yes, we do know. It's cocaine again. The answer is
Yeah,
absolutely cocaine. Because I bet you, if you went in with that sales pitch, 1982, to the executive who's just done like 4 fucking rails, he's like, dude, this sounds fucking dope. So
it's
that's how
funny
it
though.
got made.
It's funny though because of all the things you said, it kind of forgets about most of that halfway through the film to just concentrate on the body horror side of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have all of that, like the nature of the media, the nature of like everybody just watching TV and everything like that,
Yeah,
and then it
it's
just
the first half in particular is thematically rich. I mean, I would say that the movie is thematically rich throughout, but the first half in particular is thematically rich at the cost of narrative, and then the second half kind of, like you say, forgets all that, pushes the narrative, pushes the body horror, and almost becomes a completely different movie.
yeah, exactly, because it just gets to the point where they realize they can do something, and they go, "Oh, how many times can we have a pulsating Betamax, or how many times can we
It
push
looks so cool.
this pulsating Betamax into again stomach vagina, for lack of a better word." Uh,
Well, this
and
movie does invite you to ask some pretty big questions. Like, if a dude sticks a VHS in your stomach, does that make you gay? I'm not sure. I haven't watched the film, but I was just like, I would like the actual physical act of somebody sticking a VHS in your stomach, of course, is inherently gross. And this movie doesn't shy away from the body horror. I mean, it's a Cronenberg film. But there was the whole thing about like, I'd be especially upset if it was a dude doing it. It's just one of those things. It's just how I'm wired, sadly. I'm like, I should have been upset at just the simple fact that I have a stomach vagina and there's a VHS going in there. But all I'm thinking is, I can't have a dude doing that. That's absolutely out of the question. But I was glad it was a Betamax because as pertinent as I mentioned in the intro, as this movie is, as relevant as this movie is, you could just replace TV stations and video with AI and social media, and it's basically the same film. But the technology that you see on screen is so based, not just in the 80s, but in the early 80s, that it becomes its own unique thing. So it's like, yeah, you could make some slight tweaks and just release it in 2025, but you have to change technology because it's so wonderfully analog.
I mean, you're not putting a CD or a DVD in there now, are you? It's not the same, or a micro SD card. It's just not going to be the same. The other thing as well, what I liked about the end of that, sticking to the stomach vagina, was Max Wren seemed to have enough control of it by the end,
Yeah.
because uh, yeah, when Harold Ramis from Wish stuck the Betamax
Yeah.
uh in it, and then he came out with a fucking like a German grenade in his
Yeah, at
hand.
first, I had to look it up. So it was referred to as a steel hand granata.
Yeah,
And when I saw it, I didn't know what the fuck it was. So he's been like ostensibly reprogrammed at that point by Bianca with
yeah,
her own Betamax situation. So when he goes to put his VHS in and control him, he's already been reprogrammed so it doesn't work. I get that and I understand the concept of, oh, you're putting your hand in, but he's already been reprogrammed, so this is going to fuck you up. I have no idea why he came out with a hand that looked like it. Because at first, when I was watching it and he blew up, and the way he blows up, I don't know why, it reminded me very specifically of the way people blew up in the Time Bandits. It just had the same aesthetic.
yeah.
But at first, I was like, why the hell did he blow up? And because I didn't know his hand had turned into a grenade. I was just like, is that like just a bloody stub? But if you can explain to me why it became a grenade, I would love to know.
I'm just saying, like he's got control of it now. That must be his power. Whatever you stick in it, he can make you have whatever you want.
So he
Like
chose a First World War German hand grenade.
we grew up calling them toffee apples, didn't we? Like,
Oh, of course.
yeah,
Well, we
yeah.
certainly didn't grow up calling them steel hand granatas, did we? So yeah, it's fair
I
enough.
mean, he took a long time as well. Harold Ramis from Wish. He took a long time. Just I'm going to call him that all day, by the way. Just staring at that grenade before it blew up as well.
It was
Like
Harlan.
because
Harlan's his name.
yeah, Harlan. Yeah, I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
see. I kept saying from Wish, and you kept looking at you. I thought, oh, he's trying to find his real
Sorry,
name.
I was
I
looking
could
for
have
his
told you it
name,
was Harlan.
but then I got caught up with the whole grenade thing anyway. So,
I mean, I could have told you it was Harlan, played by Peter Dvorsky. But my
oh,
God,
man, he's a pro. He's a
he is
pro.
Egon Spengler. I'm
He is.
sorry.
He's just weirder. Like his whole he keeps calling him Patron for some
Patron.
reason.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out was he Spanish or Mexican or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I like just calling him because he
It,
enjoys calling him that name. The
it's
other thing that's
strange, but yeah.
very weird, sticking to
Mm-hmm.
the story, trying to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Why is a guy who runs an optician's, basically a Specsavers,
Spectacular optical. Yeah.
yeah, So why are they the ones trying to take over the video world?
I have no idea. All I could think is that because that's the thing. I was like, oh, so is spectacular optical a front? But I was like, no, because Videodrome itself is a front. So I was like, is that a front for the front? And you get caught up in the whole like the again, just trying to make sense of the narrative, especially comes. I'm sure there's people who watch this a whole bunch of times and be like, God, I could tell you this, no problem. I could provide the synopsis without any issue. I watched this movie yesterday. It's a little bit trickier, but so it was Brian Oblivion, which is genius. The whole like the nods to modern day society. It's like he's basically got like a user ID or a gamer tag. Like he's basically created those, and he is he lives online, but really what he does is live on VHSs. But it's basically the same as living online nowadays. So he created the technology behind Videodrome, but he was going to use it to create this like new race of people. Hence why he's testing on the homeless at cathode ray, that kind of weird church thing. And he was going to like have people live in this kind of TV obsessed society. I was like, okay, that's weird, but sure. And then the optician guys, they decided they could use this and they're basically using Videodrome as a political movement to get rid of the dregs of society, because they know that if you watch it, it gives you this brain tumor, it makes you controllable, and ultimately kills you. The idea is that anybody obsessed with sex or violence will watch Videodrome and then will ostensibly just die off, creating a new kind of offset of society. Is that kind of what we're getting at? And that's why eventually the guys at Spectacular Optical want to kill Bianca because of her links to her father and because they know what the technology is. I was trying to put this together as I was watching it. I was just like, but then of course his stomach opens up again. He sticks a gun in his own stomach vagina. I was like, all right, guys, the imagery is a little unsubtle, but I can see what you're going for there. Sorry, pun intended. I think that's the gist of it, but I'm not convinced it's massively important. It's very strange.
Also, did Brian Oblivion know exactly what was going to happen? Because he's dead, isn't he? He's just recorded everything he wanted to say onto about 600 videos. And his daughter has to decide which ones, Bianca Oblivion, had to decide which ones she was going to play.
Yeah, at any given time. Yeah. But I assume, like, basically, he's created this technology. He's started using it, but then he's realized, oh well, this is like the impact of watching Videodrome essentially, and it's given him this brain tumor. And then he's like, okay, I should record all this stuff so I can kind of live on forever via VHSs. It's all very strange. As I said, every decision is kind of, rather than linked to narrative, is linked to theme in many respects. And one of the biggest ones is fear of technology. And it's odd because I was bizarrely a couple of days ago watching Superman 3, and it seems to be a theme of the early 80s in cinema. So I know it sounds weird that I mentioned Superman 3, but Superman 3 is ostensibly about the fear of technology. And what was the other one? It was Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, was released a year after. It's the same thing with, everybody watching the adverts and going insane. And I think it's linked to, there was a huge surge in VHS ownership and like video nasties and all that jazz early in the 80s. So you get a lot of movies that have this overriding theme. The only difference with this film in particular is that there are so many other themes to deal with. And I just think there's basically, if you want to see the more streamlined commercial version of this movie, it's John Carpenter's They Live. Like when I was watching this, especially with like the glasses and everything else, that They Live must have been so massively influenced by this movie, and he just took the ideas and the concepts and made a more commercially viable movie with by just kind of toning it down and streamlining the themes down to like, all right, this is the underlying theme, and we can build a narrative around it rather than being like, all right, I've got like 5 themes in my head and I'll just bolt on narrative here and there. And that's why this film is great, but it's also a fucking mess.
So thank you for that. And you've said 5 and you've said themes a lot, but I'm going to carry it on with themes. Because I did look up like what the themes that this film has given us, and there is 5, right? So, media is a physical and psychological infection. Like that fucking blew me up. Then trying to say physical and psychological in the same sentence. Loss of reality and identity, surveillance and control, the body as a battleground, and the seduction of violence and taboo. Now, number 4, the body as a battleground, is really interesting It's like, what does I say? It's a metaphor for how external forces like media, ideology, or technology invade and reshape the self from the inside out. You've
It's all
for
very
an
Cronenberg.
83-minute film, you are thinking a lot. And I'm thinking,
You
fuck, you know.
and it's again all those things that you mentioned there, the themes it's going after, so applied today. Like one of the lines in this film is, "We live in an overstimulated time. We crave stimulation for its own sake." If you're telling me you can't apply that to 2025, even more so, like it was just amazing that that was already a fear in 1983. I'm not sure if he kind of looks at like if you could jump forward to 2025, it's just like, oh yeah, there's a reason we're fucking terrified. Look what's happened, kind of thing. But spoiler alert, getting into Hug to the Future, whether you'd remake or let this film die. I mean, the easiest ever. Like you would absolutely remake this film today because I
Yeah.
think all the themes are absolutely prescient.
Right. Well, don't jump ahead yet because we got a lot to talk about.
No, no,
Uh,
no, absolutely.
one of them being fucking Blondie is in this film. Well, Blondie is sort of in this film
Debbie
because
Harris.
yes, Debbie Harry is in this film, right? But it's like she's. I had a bit of an issue with it in the fact that they didn't really big her not big her character. Fuck me. For some reason, again, does a podcast really doesn't think of words sometimes. Uh, her character. What am I trying to say? Development. They
There we
didn't
go.
really develop her character or anything like that. She was just introduced, and then she says, "Oh, I like a bit of S&M. Okay, stick a needle in me. That's fine." And then she disappears, and then she starts showing up as hallucinations. And
Mhm.
like, I saw the film a couple of days ago. Was it Debbie Harry on TV that got whipped, or was it his secretary on TV? I can't remember
It was
who he was
both. It
whipping.
was both.
Okay,
It was like because this film takes like a pretty hard turn from the moment that I can only refer to it as the slapping sequence when his I'm not sure if she's the PR whatever, she comes over and at
yeah,
one minute he's slapping her, then he's slapping Debbie Harry, and you're just like, all right, wait, am I seeing this? And this is all before the whole tumor thing and hallucinations get explained. And
yeah,
from then on, it becomes an increasingly stranger and stranger movie.
yeah.
I
Because
think Debbie
but
Harry is very good, and I assume she's supposed to kind of represent the kind of more extreme end of erotica, which is in this film. And but I mean, she is like to bring it back to your initial point, she is so mad keen from the opening. I love it when they're on the talk show and he starts hitting on her
yeah,
while the other woman, so it doesn't wait until like after the talk show is finished. He's already getting after it. And Nikki, like you said, if you take it back to a house and you show like a little bit of snuff film because it's something you're kind of investigating, she's like, oh no, I'm pretty keen on this. She wants cigarettes put on her chest. I don't know about you, but that's all a little rich for my blood.
well, it's also the point as
I'm
well where
debating on this. Sorry, Debbie.
she turns around and she says, "Oh, I got some time off. I'm going to investigate Videodrome. I think this is perfect for me, so I'm going to like audition." Like, fuck, all right, love. I mean, there's something each to their own for
Of
sexual
course,
gratification,
of course.
absolutely. But like you, yeah, I probably draw the line at stuff like that. But what I couldn't get over,
Especially, it's more like it's the opening date. It's
yeah,
not like you don't want to scare anyone too early, but like 3, 4 dates in, you're like, oh, you push the boundaries a little bit. It's like, oh, a little bit of hanky panky, fair enough. We're talking like immediately. Oh, if you could just start piercing my ears, and I mean, even just I would say the grosser stuff is actually the norm is when they kiss. I'm not sure if it's like an early example of ASMR, but those kisses are audibly intense. And I was watching this movie
yeah,
with earphones. I'm like, God damn. I think it was a nod to a scene in the original script where they were kissing and they kind of meld together and turn into like a goop, but they couldn't like achieve based on the budget and the special effects at the time. And don't be wrong, the special effects are great in this film. They just basically decided they couldn't pull it off. So instead, he
yeah.
just had a really wet, noisy kiss instead.
But aside from the introduction of her and that first sexual
Mhm.
experience, she just becomes more of a screen presence then for his hallucination. So they don't seem to develop a character. I just wanted more from Debbie Harry as Nikki Brand. I just didn't feel like there was
Mhm.
enough to like make him like because as soon as she goes, he doesn't really care after that. She
Mhm.
disappears. He starts hallucinating about her. She's on the screen. He kisses the screen. His head falls into the screen. But I don't feel like there was enough of that wanting between them
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the thing. I don't think he was particularly into her. I think it was just more what she represents,
But
and
what?
it was
Yeah,
that
I get
yeah.
that. But that's not what they're hinting at when he's
Mhm.
having all these hallucinations about her. But these hallucinations then are showing that he's infatuated with her, and she's leading him down the Videodrome path. But you don't get that when they're actually together. I just
I see what I mean.
I
But
felt
I
they
think
kind of just
yeah.
sorry, I felt they just kind of just kept it as a one trick pony.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I just felt like it needed. I mean, you had fucking more to work with. It was 83 minutes. You could have bumped it up to 90.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest because I think you have
Yeah.
the same issue, even to an extent, with James Woods, who I think is very good in this. But they kind of trying to sell you on the idea that he's this like absolute degenerate. But because the movie hits the ground running, and of course you get the impression he is a little bit, but maybe because he is just like quite a compelling screen presence, I don't think that ever clearly comes across. Like the most you get is like him having those chats in like the boardroom meetings earlier in the film where they're trying to sell him on like pornographic material. But even then, I'm just like, I'm not sure if they make, and maybe it would have been had a different read in like 1983 because people were a bit more kind of, buttoned up when it came to pornography. But I love those early sequences with like samurai dreams and the lost art of like artistic porn. I just don't think that like exists anymore. And what it actually reminded me of, and the way he was talking about it, and in his own station, it reminded me of the early days of Channel 5 in the UK, where of
Yeah.
course it had like
Nine
its
o'clock.
daytime TV, but like after 9 p.m. For people of our age, like in our early teens, the big deal was that it got a little bit blue after 9 p.m. And it really was so low key. It wasn't even Samurai Dreams. But before the internet and all this other, like any form of titillation, especially on like most of it, I didn't have cable until I was like 16. So when Channel 5 showed up, it was the fifth channel of five channels. And
Yeah.
the fact that it had a little bit of like, there was the potential that there might be a tit somewhere, that was like a huge deal. And the other thing it hints at as well, I'm not sure if it was such a big deal for you, but like the whole idea of it stealing the Videodrome feed. I'm not sure if you knew anyone who had one of those giant ass like satellite dishes when you were younger, which
No.
got TV from all over the world, especially from Europe. And I remember going to one of the kids' houses in high school because this was like, the kids up in King Coyd who had a bit of scratch back in the day. And because you could pick up TV from, say, like Germany would have just like what we would have considered back then as being like borderline pornographic adverts at
Yeah.
like midday. So you go out at lunchtime and you turn on the TV and you get all 127, and they're like the stupid phone number for this porn line, and you might see like half titty. But again, at like in 1994, when like 12 years old, and seeing that in midday in somebody's like living room, it blew my fucking mind.
Dude, I lived in Trowbridge in St. Mellons. No fucker had that thing. They were stealing they were stealing cable and electricity from the neighbors.
Fair enough,
You
fair enough.
mentioned about the like he was in a hotel room as well with a Japanese porn dealer, and he was taking
Mhm.
the what do you call it, samurai dreams? I think you called
Samurai
it.
Dreams, yeah.
Yeah. So that porn dealer was David Sabucci,
Mhm.
right? And he later became a minister in the Ontario provincial government. His appearance in this film as a pornographer was exploited by the opposition.
Oh, that's so
So
hard.
yeah, no,
And it's interesting that you mentioned the fact that he's Canadian because it's not one of the things that's like pushed upon you, like especially if you're not from Canada or the US. I don't think it's ever made clear that this, like, you see the tower in Toronto. So, if you kind of know what that is, you're like, oh, well, this is set in Toronto. But, obviously a big part of it is Cronenberg himself is Canadian, but this is considered a Canadian film. It's filmed in Canada. It's got a huge number of Canadians in the cast. And, oh God, I forgot his name, but the guy did the score, which is very oppressive for this film. He's Canadian as well. God, he did like Lord of the Rings and everything as well. I'll get it in a minute. But yeah, it's both incredibly Canadian, but without ever kind of ramming it down your throat. But again, I keep coming back to the fact that it's 83 minutes. There's no time
yeah.
for Canada. We've got videotapes and sexy TVs to get on with. And yeah, it gets pretty fucking weird. Like once you get past the madness of the core plot, and it is one of those weird things. It's
Howard Shaw, by
it's
the way. Howard
Howard
Shaw
Shaw.
did it. Yeah,
That yeah. Thank you very much. He like if you look at Howard
yeah,
Shaw, he's done a huge note. Like he's an Oscar-winning
yeah.
composer. But if this film wasn't already oppressive enough, his score really adds to that sense of like because there's like I can imagine that Twin Peaks as well was quite influenced by this film. I wouldn't be surprised if David Lynch watched this and went, "I want a bit of that action." Especially when he actually went to the optician guy. What was his name? The optician dude, Brian something.
Oblivion.
No, no, no. Barry Convex.
Barry
Like
Convex, yeah.
when Barry Convex appears, let's be clear, out of fucking nowhere from a narrative perspective, and he's talking about recording his hallucinations and all that jazz, and he out of the blue puts this giant machine on top of his head. The view you get from inside that machine is a cross between the Virtual Boy, which was Nintendo's short-lived 3D home console released in 1997, I want to say. If you haven't heard of it, there's a good reason. It was terrible. All the games were just red, and that was it. It was like a cross between that, the Terminator, and remember the Red Room from Twin Peaks? It definitely reminded me of that as well. So, yeah, I think this film has been massively influential,
You
but
can you
again,
can't
it does
brush
jump around a bit.
you can't brush off Brian Convex as well. The name
No,
Convex.
what a name.
Convex lens, isn't it? So it
Yeah.
bulges outwards and brings light to a focal point. The opposite of convex is concave, which curves inward like a ball. So, mate, I've been googling all this shit. What we, yeah. So,
Well, I mean, Cronenberg is the master of absolutely batshit names his movies. And it probably, Max Wren, that's a fucking awesome name in and of itself.
yeah,
But yeah, if you go back through David Cronenberg's filmography and just, go onto IMDb, look at like the top 3 characters in each of his films, you'd be like, oh yeah, he goes pretty big on the names. That's for
so
sure.
not trying to take anything away from this film, but do you know what this film did make me want to do?
What's that?
Go back and revisit Naked Lunch with
I
Peter Weller.
definitely, I was going to say, because, I mentioned in the intro that this is considered by many now to be one of the best Cronenberg films. So when I was thinking of the best Cronenberg films, I think everyone agrees like his masterpiece is arguably The Fly. It's certainly my favorite Cronenberg film.
I don't
History of
know. I mean,
Violence
History of Violence is great, but you said as well that this was like his first official film because it was the
was
bigger
his first
budget.
mainstream budget
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
but mate, the film he did before it, you can't take anything away from it. I fucking loved this. Scanners. I thought
Well,
Scanners was great.
that's on my list of best Cronenberg films. So I've got The Fly, A History of Violence, The Dead Zone, Eastern Promises, Scanners, and Cosmopolis. I know Cosmopolis isn't everyone's cup of tea. I thought it was a great film. But saying that, I haven't seen Dead Ringers, Naked Lunch, or Crash. Now, the one I really want to see out of those is the one you already
Is Naked
mentioned,
Lunch?
Naked
Yeah,
Lunch. That's for sure. You're a fan of that film, yeah?
I am a fan of that film. I've seen that more than Videodrome. I do remember like more of that film, but Jesus
Mm-hmm.
Christ, it's a
It
film.
looks bonkers, as you expect for a Cronenberg. It doesn't look as dark as this. It looks a bit more fun.
It is. It is more fun. It's again. I can't really go into like all the themes and everything from it because it's been a
No,
while
no,
since
no.
I've seen it. I just remember like a massive cockroach in it, like with a hat
Mm-hmm.
on and milk spilling and everything. It's really
Uh,
weird. Yeah.
See, when you talk about Cronenberg films without any kind of context, it just sounds like you've just woken up and you're explaining a dream. That's why I think The Fly worked for so many people is that it does work. Like for all the body horror nonsense, it's something you can just get your head around. And of course, he applies his usual themes on top of that. But just from a narrative perspective, The Fly works as just a movie. And I think he just elevates the material. Whereas with something like this, where he's just been completely let off the leash, you're like, I could do with someone either reining him in or just expanding the narrative, just giving it a little bit of it. It's very rare that we have like a movie which is, under 90 minutes and we complain about it. This is one of those examples. Like you said, last week, Dead Heat, 83 minutes. Perfect. Fucking spot on. This movie, you just want 10, 15 minutes just to give it a bit of time to breathe.
Especially considering it felt like they rushed the ending as well. When he was
Yeah.
reprogrammed, all of a sudden he's shooting everybody. He goes into his own TV station, shoots the 2 guys.
Mm-hmm,
For
mm-hmm.
the only way I can decide it is because they might play Videodrome if he doesn't.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
shot them. Okay, that's fine. He got away with that pretty cleanly. Like
So this is after Bianca
has
she's like
reprogrammed him.
reprogrammed
Yeah.
him, and at that point again you can ask the question: is she doing it for her father's cause, or is she just doing it purely for revenge at that point? Because she's like you said, she's just like I want you to go and basically smoke everyone, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
And you haven't even mentioned the fact that he's got some weird fucking gun hand,
Well,
which might or might not exist.
I was going to get there. Don't worry. So he kills those 2 guys. He gets away with that pretty cleanly because his secretary couldn't believe that he did it. So she just leads him out. So it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
He gets out. He goes across the road then and he stands with some guy talking to himself. And then his hand starts to turn into that weird mollusk, like club hand thing that has a gun at the end of it. It
Mm-hmm.
it kind of looks like if you were to let the gun from Existence grow.
That's exactly what I
Yeah.
have written down. Yeah.
Uh, and then he goes, he manages to get all the way to where uh, Brian Convex is having his Barry, whatever his name was. Sorry, I forgot his name already. Uh, what was his name? Sorry,
Oh,
Barry
oh,
Convex. So wherever Barry Convex is having his
mhm.
opticians
His
gala,
glasses, his what is it? They've got like a branding thing, haven't they? The
yeah,
Medici line of glasses. It's
yeah,
like they have a bizarre song and dance sequence at the start. You're like, all right, sure, we're going for this. No, no
but
problem.
nobody stopped him from getting on stage. Barry didn't look really like straight, not strange. Barry didn't look upset that Max Wren was on stage with him. There was until he pulled the gun out and then he started screaming.
Well,
And then,
even before that, like when
well,
he
because
goes
Max
to
Wren
try and
kills
find
himself,
them,
but he doesn't kill himself. He kills himself, but then that turns out to be a dream or a vision, which leads him to then go and kill himself off screen.
yeah, even the end. I mean, if you want to jump straight to the ending, it's like I couldn't like. On the one hand, you can read it as Max fully embracing the Videodrome program and the new reality beyond the limitations of
Well,
the physical body.
he's not doing that, is he? He's doing it the other way. He's
Or
not.
you could read it as Bianca has got what she wanted, i.e., revenge for the death of her father, and now wants him off the board. So it's just kind of brainwashing him to blow his own fucking head off. So yeah, I get. I take the fact that you're supposed to be able to read things multiple ways, but when he goes to the aforementioned Medici kind of glasses reveal party, and that's after he's gone to what was it, Spectacular Optical, and just had a bizarre run-in with a Jamaican salesman for some reason, which
Yeah, yeah.
I thought, is this guy going to be or do something? Because it
No, he
feels
was just
so
dude. He was
specific.
just a salesman. He was literally just selling glasses to an old lady. And
It was
then
weird as fuck.
just out of the blue, again, Wish Egon showed up, and
Hmm,
that's when
hmm.
and that's when he got blown up by the toffee apple. And then he goes to Glasses Con and kills fucking Barry Convex. But
And
what
when
I
he
thought,
kills Barry, White, right, it might be the most visually impressive sequence of the film. It's certainly one of them, and it reminded very specifically of the Thing. With like the body horror and the body opening up, and you could see the skull. It looked unbelievable. Why did it happen?
which one? Sorry.
When Barry Convex gets shot, yeah, by
Oh yeah, yeah,
Max,
yeah.
and then on stage, his body kind of almost it doesn't quite disintegrate. It opens up like I said, like in the Thing. You almost expect like another monster to come out of his stomach. I just don't know why that happened.
I don't know.
Okay, that's good. I
I
thought you were
don't
going to
know.
be like, oh, you missed this really obvious thing. I was
I'm
just like, this looks amazing. I have no fucking idea what's happening, dude.
You're killing me with this ending because I'm trying to get to the ending, but every time I take a breath, you're thinking, "Oh, it's my turn,"
Sorry, bud.
right? Because you asked about like him killing himself, but then that being a dream.
Hmm,
I don't think it was because he joined Videodrome. I do think it was to weak because Nikki again appears as hallucination to say you have to weaken Videodrome. You've got to leave the old flesh behind. So I
hmm.
kind of think that maybe the reason why he has to kill himself is because he can still be reprogrammed back to Videodrome
Well,
if he
yeah.
doesn't kill himself. So
That. Mhm.
I do think it's more. I don't even know if it's revenge from Bianca. I do think it's more to make Brian Oblivion's not dreams, vision come true. So
Mhm, mhm.
if he kills himself, New Flesh is getting stronger and stronger because people are because he's done this in front of loads of people, haven't he? Long live the New Flesh. So that's
Mhm.
gonna be word of
That's
mouth
like their
and move on.
that's
Yeah,
their new political slogan, isn't it? Kind of
yeah.
thing. Which is
So
yeah, it's so bizarre. There's so many big ideas in this film, but they are often reduced to like a line here and there. Like even like you said, when Budget Harold Ramis and Barry Convex are there, and it just suddenly gets revealed that he's been like working with him for 2 years undercover
yeah,
on behalf of this shadowy organization who are a front for Videodrome. And you're just like, wait, for 2 years? Just so you could get to work with this guy who has like this tiny little sleazy station. And like last week is the first time that you showed him this stuff. I don't, again, I am just immediately sitting there asking why. And don't get me wrong, I asked why a lot of times in this film. And I thought, oh,
in
maybe I'll
regards
get the answer 30 minutes later. No, the answers were not forthcoming.
to the why, I still don't understand why it had to be a snuff film. Why Videodrome had to be real people with real fears getting killed
Mhm, mhm.
to make Videodrome a possibility. I still don't get that.
I think it was again to weed out the worst of the worst in society. So they did say that the more erotic, the more, and the violence was the big part of it. They said, oh, well, it's erotic, is that it impacts a very specific part of your brain, which allows for this tumor thing to grow. So they were suggesting that the violence and the eroticism are both important, but especially the violence. And I think the idea is that as people kind of had the idea, saying, "Oh, this could be real," and obviously it is. It's like they're going to be the ones who watch it, are the ones who want that extra level of like dark eroticism, and they're the ones that ultimately that spectacular optical want to kill out of society. So I think that's maybe the reason that they're actually using snuff material. But that was the thing. I didn't know this movie had anything to do with snuff films. I was like 10 minutes in. I was like, oh, it's a film about snuff films. It's like 8mm, but a little bit more fun. Fancy that. It's weird to say that a snuff film is fun, but it's definitely more fun than 8mm. Make no fucking mistake.
I was waiting for that weird pink room as well, because I'm thinking Cronenberg. I was waiting for that weird pink room to end up being some sort of flesh.
Yeah, totally. That back wall in particular.
Yeah, that's where I was waiting for it to like start writhing as he's watching it, or because he's in the room at one point whipping the TV. So I was half expecting that room to just turn into bodies or something. And I'm a little bit. And what does this say about me that I'm a little bit disappointed that didn't happen?
I get it. I mean, it just reminds me that one of my notes here is just whipping the filth TV. I'm just like, how many movies do you get to write that for? Not many at all. And that is the thing within the confines of the movie. It totally makes sense. And like you said, I think at that point, that's where you maybe want to bring Nikki back in. Like rather than her just being a visual representation, have a bit more character development there. And that was one of the actual other surprises of this movie, is that Debbie Harry was in this film from Blondie Flame, and I had no idea. But again, like the whole technology, the fear of technology and being on screen at the time, it was the same for musicians. Like, what was it? Like Mick Jagger, Michael Jackson, Madonna, David Bowie. They all had that crossover into movies at similar-ish time, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it kind of stretched out over into the 90s with Mick Jagger and Madonna and stuff like that. But that seemed to be the big thing. The bigger a star you were in terms of, in the music industry, the more likely it was that you would have a role in movies. And the other thing is, we found out with like David Bowie doing Cat People, a movie we've covered on this podcast, is that they were willing to go weird. They weren't just like, oh, I'm going to do like a nice mainstream movie. Like, fucking hell, this is not. And we've mentioned mainstream in terms of budget, tonally, visually, everything else. This is not a mainstream movie. And, Debbie Harris is basically playing a sadomasochist. That's a big fucking swing. And she goes for it. And for her limited screen time, she is an utterly compelling screen presence.
I do have to call you up on something, because you've said it a couple of times, not in this podcast, over the last couple of months. And I don't know why I keep agreeing with you. David Bowie was never in Cat People.
No, he did the score. He did the
soundtrack. Yeah.
No, he was in a whole bunch of very strange films, The Man Who Fell to Earth and all that jazz. I don't know why. Yeah, he totally did the soundtrack. I think just because when I think of that movie, I think of that song. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's in the movie. He's totally not in the movie at all.
No, it's Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, it's Malcolm McDowell. Totally. It's Sue Surfs. Like, of course.
Sorry, I mean, I don't mean to call you out. But
no, you have to. Someone has to before the listeners do. Jesus Christ.
Because when you ask, because of the listeners, because when you asked me if we got anything else, I personally got called out for some fuck up I made last week, didn't I? So I
know what it is, and make no mistake, it is not as egregious as me saying David Bowie was in.
Oh no, God no!
It's definitely not as egregious as that. But yeah, but my point stands. There was that period of huge crossover between, and it's easy to forget that some of them had really successful movie careers. Like Michael Jackson kind of did his own thing where he made his own mini movies, albeit with some of the, working with Spielberg, Coppola, all these guys. But like even Madonna, who's become like a figure of fun to a certain extent, because people remember like the bad movies. She was really good in a lot of movies before it all turned a little bit sour. Yeah. David Bowie had like an interesting movie career. Mick Jagger did not, in fairness. He did not. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the rest of Debbie Harry's movies, but again, she's fantastic in this one. But then so is, and we hinted at this at the end of the last episode, James Woods, because of his political views to an extent, by the sounds of things, has kind of disappeared off the screens. And it's such a shame because he is such a compelling screen presence, especially in this film. Like, I didn't know, for obvious reasons, he was one of the executive producers on Oppenheimer, but they purposefully pushed him to the back and said, listen, we're not going to bring you up at all because of your outspoken support of Donald Trump. And you just think, what, 2-3 years later, if that happened now, they'd be slaughtered. They would get fucking slaughtered because Trump would find out and he'd fucking ring the bell and be like, don't go and see this film. Oh, what? Like he's working on this and that. And the Hollywood elite are tearing him apart because he dares to support the conservatives and support the Republican Party. They would get fucking torn a new one. But 3 years ago, that's what happened. And he got pushed to the side, which is a fucking shame as far as I'm concerned, regardless of whether you agree. And I don't agree with his political views, but that's besides the point. I just want to see more James Wood on screen.
I mean, more James Wood from the 80s and the 90s. He was he did smarmy villain quite well.
Yeah.
But I don't know, he just hasn't done much. And it's not because of that. It's just
No, I know.
I can't really pinpoint anything that he's done in the late noughts or the teens that I would say that was good. I mean, the last thing I remember in, and it's not fair to him, is that fucking film with Sylvester Stallone, where Sylvester Stallone played a bomb expert, and James Woods was the guy trying to catch him. Oh, with Sharon Stone. What was that?
Oh, not the Specialist?
Specialist. I always get that confused because they were released about the same time with Assassins. Yeah,
always mix those two up. Honest to God, the first one popped into my head. I was like, Assassins. I was like, no. This is what you always do. It's not Assassins. It's the Specialist. Yeah. Did they have like the same VHS cover? Because in my head, I just kind of like combined the two in terms of like the imagery of the posters. Because I was never fussed on either of those films. But at some point, I've just combined them in my brain. And I'm just like, all right, I'm flipping a coin here. It could be Assassins. It could be the Specialist. It's one of those motherfuckers.
They're pretty much the same film, if I'm honest with you, because it's about a guy who kills people and going and helping a woman who needs help against a bunch of bad guys. The Specialist was released in 1994 and Assassins were released in 95. So it's pretty much just like
there we go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just checking to see what the whole classic, what is James Woods known for? So does this make the list? So there's John Carpenter's Vampires, which I'm not going to lie, has come up on this podcast so many times now that I'm like, I kind of want to watch John Carpenter's Vampires.
Never seen it?
I've seen it once back in like 2001 or something. Oh, when was it released? Let me double check.
1998.
1998. So I haven't seen it. Like I probably watched it in like 99.
I pulled that off the top of my head. That's how many times I've seen that film.
I do need to rewatch that film. Hercules, he was the voice of Hades. He was legitimately fantastic in that. The Virgin Suicides, Videodrome. So those are his known fors, which is, that's fair enough. But I know what you mean. He's one of those guys where maybe because he's lived on in the popular consciousness because of stuff like Family Guy, I just assume I'm missing a whole bunch of movies that he was in. But because he's like, whenever I do see him, he's very watchable. Maybe I'm just like, I'd like him to be in a good movie here and there. I'm just like, if I saw a trailer for like an interesting movie and I saw James Woods in it, it would grab my attention. It totally would.
But he's never been, aside from I guess the real leading man, has he? So he's always been the supporting guy. So he's done like, Once Upon a Time in America, Cat's Eye. Well, Salvador. Oh, that was starring him in Love and War, bestseller, Cop, The Boost. Like he's been fucking fuck me, a film I actually do love, The Hard Way.
Oh yeah,
remember that film with him and Michael J. Fox?
Yeah, there was like The General's Daughter, like the end, like Turn of the Centuries in The General's Daughter. Dirty Pictures had okay reviews. Again, all stuff where he was in the Final Fantasy Bomb, The Spirits Within, but again that was voice work. John Q. He's just had one of these kind of almost careers, but he's almost like more famous than he should be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's because he's got that like unique look as well, that he is memorable, even in kind of like perhaps not fantastic films. You're just kind of like one of those guys. Like I just think for the movies he's been in, if you did the pointless test and you just put up a picture of James Woods, I bet you loads of people would be like, I know who he is, but I don't know what from. You'd be like, could you name, I know it's James Woods. I name 4 James Woods films. And they'd be like, dude, I can hardly name fucking one. But I just know he's James Woods. It's one of those weird ones. But anyway, back to the movie. The physical effects we've hardly spoken about. They are gross, but they are unbelievably good. You already mentioned the kind of sexy Betamax in the TV. The famous scene when he sticks his head into the TV, with Nikki's lips. it hasn't aged a day. Again, to bring it back to what I think of as being the high watermark for physical horror effects in the early 80s, it is The Thing. This is up there with that. It's not quite to the level of The Thing, and it's going for a different vibe, obviously, and it's not quite as kind of large scale. But this is top tier stuff in this film, and it looks fantastic.
Absolutely, and it still holds up to today. Like
Yeah.
all of it holds up so well. Even the transition scenes, like where the transition from he's talking to the TV to all of a sudden, and I'm not mentioning it again, to he's whipping the TV in the
Mhm.
Videodrome room. Like the transitions look fantastic. The body horror stuff looks great. It's so good. It
I
really
was
is, mate.
just to speak of that, like you say about the transitions, it's one of those ones you can tell it's a transition, but when his hand does transform, and you can see that the gun starts kind of going into his arm. Initially, what it reminds me of is Akira, when Tetsuo finally gets taken over and like the metal and the brick starts going
Yeah.
into his body and it looks amazing. It reminds me of that. I wasn't such a big fan of the big goop hand it became at the end. I was just like, it looks so cool when it was just like parts of the gun started like splitting into his hands. Gross, sure, but it looked cool. But then all of a sudden it's just like a fucking glob hand. Like the last shot where he's, it's this big, dramatic, thematically rich sequence at the end of the film, and all I'm doing is looking at his big glob hand and going, it looks kind of dumb. It's just one of those things.
He really didn't need to fuck himself in his stomach with his own gun, did he? But he saw a hole. He saw something that had, I don't know, like a shaft on it, and thought, you know what, A
Yeah.
equals B equals. Put it
Yeah,
in
well,
there.
like I said earlier, the imagery is occasionally somewhat unsubtle, and that is never more so than when his dick gun gets stuck into his fucking stomach vagina. But I think it's a comment on just how gross dudes are. Like, if you suddenly, like, you can imagine a dude sitting there, his stomach opens up, and he's got a gun in his hand. His first thought is like, maybe I'll fuck it. It just that's how gross guys are. That's how gross we are. That you look at it and go, dude, what are you doing? But the other part, you're just like, I get it. I get it. I can
Yeah.
imagine a dude doing it. We are inherently, as a species, absolutely disgusting.
Even taking the sexual connotations out of it, right? It's just playing with an open wound.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know where it is. With I don't want to. I don't want to put everybody in the same boat. But
Mhm,
whenever I've had as a kid open wounds,
mhm.
you touch it. I mean, you're not meant
Yeah.
to. It's so dirty and stuff. But
I love how,
I've
I love how you just catch it as well say like, oh, taking the sexual connotations out of that sequence. I'm like, dude, if you take the sexual connotations out of that sequence, I don't think there's much of a sequence left. It is absolute filth
yeah, yeah,
of
okay.
the highest order.
I mean,
But this film is so darkly erotic at every
oh
time.
yeah,
Like the TV, the videotapes, basically all like heaving and breathing and becoming like these, like when he touches the top of the TV and like the veins come out and stuff. It's just like, oh my god, this is such a weird film. And like I said, it's amazing that this film feels so pertinent in 2025. But not only that, over 40 years since it was released, there has been nothing like this film as that
no,
I've ever seen. It's
no,
totally
nothing.
unique.
Yeah.
Totally unique.
Before we move on,
Hmm.
I do have to mention one thing.
Yeah.
The the pirate satellite dish.
Hmm.
Okay, it's in a secret location. It's not on studio premises.
Hmm.
Okay, he goes to Harlan to find out what he's found on the pirate radio station. But you're not really hiding a satellite dish that looks like it belongs in orbit, are you?
I guess not.
That thing was fucking massive. Where would they put like? It just looks like they put it in the courtyard of a block of flats, and everyone's okay with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's all very, very silly. And that is it's such a grown-up film in so many respects. But then some of the, again, narrative choices and the way they get you from A to B so incredibly quickly are just so dumb. And just
Yeah,
it's so reliant upon just maybe just the fast-paced nature of the film that you don't have time to stop and think about it. Like there are so many questions as you're watching this film that you haven't got time to ask. Like, wait, what about that giant? Of course, Rob will. That's your specialty. But most people haven't got the time to stop and think about the giant satellite dish. They're like, why is he fucking his own like stomach vagina? So it kind of relies on that. But yeah, it's a good question, which again I don't have the answer to. But that is true of people are like, I listen to this podcast to get answers. Well, you're not getting them, sadly. We're having a bash here and there, but a lot of the answers to a lot of the questions is I don't know.
I mean, in all fairness, you're not really getting a guy that can complete the sentence. I trip over my words more than anybody I know listening to a fucking
You did
podcast.
it earlier. You tend to do it in fits and starts. Like you trip over one word, then you'll trip over 10, but it'll all be in the space of like 10 seconds, and then you're over it for the rest of the podcast. So I think it's absolutely fine. But yeah, I mean, three-quarters of the film, three-quarters of the way through this film, if you remove all the body horror stuff, this ostensibly just becomes, and I feel like I've used the term ostensibly a lot of times in this podcast, and I do apologize. It basically just becomes the Manchurian Candidate for a while.
Yeah.
Where different people are taking control of Max, and it just turns into a violent fuckfest, basically.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly fun. But there's just, if it's in any way become infuriating the way we're talking about this film, like jumping around from here to there, it's very tricky not to, because there isn't a clear through line in this movie. It, as I mentioned, it becomes very strange from the slapping sequences onwards, but everything kind of cuts in on itself, both narratively and thematically. At any given moment, there's a lot of crisscrossing, and then all of a sudden the movie's over, and you're just sitting there going, I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I think I enjoyed it.
In all fairness, we've never had a linear approach to this podcast. We've
No.
never gone, right, let's discuss the beginning, middle, and end. We've always gone, right, let's discuss the random 45th minute for 12 hours, and then we'll discuss about the rest of the film.
Yeah, so, and you do specialize in going, like, literally, I'll like have an opening kind of spiel, and then you go, let's talk about the ending immediately, and then we'll kind of, but then we don't work backwards from there. We go from the ending to the middle to the start, back to the ending.
I mean, in my defense, the ending was the last thing I watched of this film.
Fair enough. And it is a very memorable ending for one reason or another. But let's move on to favorite scene then. Mine. It's probably the first sexy TV sequence when he puts his head in the TV, because I knew that scene was coming, but I'd only ever seen stills of it, and I wasn't sure how great it was going to look, and it really sold me at that point just how weird this film was going to be. Because at the start, I'm just like, my mind is on what is happening from a narrative perspective, and I know this weird stuff's in the post, but at that time, I'm just kind of keeping my brain on getting from A to B. I'm like, okay, so this is the person he is. This is what he's trying to do. This is what Videodrome is. And then all of a sudden, he's sticking his head in the TV, and it looks unbelievable. And it really does sum up the kind of the vibe of this film, if nothing else. And like I said, the physical effects just look amazing. So I'm going to go with the sexy TV sequence. Sexy TV sequence.
I'm going to go practical effects as well, like the effects as well. And I got to go for the first time you see stomach vagina, because it just comes out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden, he's holding a pulsating Betamax tape, and he's going, well, this has to go somewhere. Open your chest. Like, literally.
This has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
That's like, that could be the tagline for this film. This has to go somewhere, because that is what everybody does. As soon as they have something in their hand, they're just like, well, this has got to go somewhere. And well, it appears I have a new hole, so this is going in that motherfucker for sure. Except for, of course, the death of Barry Convex when everything comes out of him. But that's the other.
But I got to go for that, because it's something you, especially in 1983, it's something you haven't seen before. So I think, and like I said before, it still holds up. So I got to go with that as the favorite scene. Yeah.
Yeah, they even do a bit where, his hands are weird, and they kind of obviously added a fake arm, and you can kind of tell, but it still looks pretty cool. And, HD, as we mentioned so many times, or 4K, whatever you're watching these films in now, they can be very unforgiving for these older films. Because before, the one that always jumps out to me was when we were watching True Lies, which is a fantastic film. But whenever they use stunt doubles, a lot of these films you hardly notice because you're watching on like VHS. And then all of a sudden you're watching on like a 55-inch 4K screen, and you're like, oh, dude, that is not Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of thing. So, but this film gets by for the most part. And as you say, a lot of the transitions, they're very natural. There's no like obvious, like, oh my God, I'm just watching, special effects. It's a great movie. In terms of loves and hates, my three loves, number one, wonderfully mad premise that is fully committed to with no compromises. I think that's fair to say. Like I said earlier, more than 40 years old and still absolutely unique. Number two, 83 minutes long, death to long movies, long live the 83-minute movie. I know we've complained about it in this case, but I'd still happily live in a world with more 83-minute movies. And number three, the core cast are all totally going for it. Woods, Debbie Harry are particularly good. And four, I'm going to just sneak it in there. The visual effects are ace, as we've already mentioned. Those are my loves.
So number one for me is the direction by Cronenberg. I mean, as you said before, the film cemented his reputation like as a master of the body horror style of filming. the transformation scenes that he had, it felt like it was ahead of its time as well in 1983.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got to go for his direction. That James Wood's performance was very intense. You know,
Mhm.
it's fucking grounded but unhinged at the same time. He kind of anchors the film's descent into madness. So I get it's like
I
mix of
agree, and
sleaze. Sorry, his
yeah, yeah.
mix of sleaze. What did I write here? Sleaze, curiosity, and vulnerability. It
That's a great word to use. Actually, I
makes it all
think
quite
that's one of the
believable.
I think that's one of the reasons it actually worked is that, as I mentioned at the start, you're supposed to be sold on this idea that he's a sleazebag, and he is, but he's also an oddly likable character. And I think
Yeah.
that term you use there, vulnerability, is one of the key aspects that, if he's just a complete bellend with no redeeming factors, I don't think this is a very pleasant watch. But towards the end of the film, you kind of care what happens to Max. You're like, yeah, he's a dick, but at this point, he's kind of our dick. That's a horrible sentence, but you know what I mean there. So,
It's got to go
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, it's got to go somewhere. In terms of hates, number one.
Hang on. I
The
sorry, I had two. I got
Oh,
two.
sorry, my bad,
Yeah.
my bad.
The practical effects. We
Mhm.
don't usually mention unless it's a big name like Stan Winston or anything like that. But Rick Baker, his special makeup effects in this were fucking fantastic. We've already said it all
Oh,
the way through, so yeah, we've got to give
yeah,
him
no,
props for that.
at least elite level stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah, we mentioned numerous times the idea that this film had like a bit of a mainstream budget. This film was still made for 5 million, and it got those level of effects. I know
yeah.
it's 1983, blah blah blah, but even 5 million, if kind of adjust for inflation, it's not crazy money that this movie was made for by any stretch of the imagination, and it looks the fucking bee's knees. And a big part of that, as you say, is the Rick Baker special effects and the direction from David
Well,
Cronenberg.
that's the word you use then, imagination. When you're grounded for money, your imagination comes in, doesn't it? And you've
Mhm,
got to
mhm.
figure out ways to do it. And that's, yeah, I think it's great for the money. I think they did fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
I mentioned earlier that David Cronenberg had written this sequence where they kind of meld together, but somebody has stepped in, and it's so important. We mentioned so many times on this podcast in the past that someone's come in and said, "Listen, for this budget, we cannot do that justice, so we don't do it." It's as simple as fucking that. It's like within the budget, we can do this, and we can make this look fucking dope. We can't do this unless we have like either 5 years from now, like I know you're not a fan, but it was like James Cameron waited for the technology to catch up before he did Avatar, or you wait until you've got the money to do it justice. Otherwise, you tone it the fuck down so it still looks ace. And this is a perfect example of it. They've used every penny. The film looks awesome. It never outstretched. It never lives beyond it lives beyond its means. Jesus Christ, we're all having problems with words today.
yeah.
In terms of hates, number one, the narrative can be a tad obtuse. As I said, the thematically rich but comes at the cost of narrative clarity. Number two, it throws a lot of themes at the 83-minute runtime. I don't think, you mentioned there's at least 5 core themes.
Yeah.
For there to be 5 core themes, that's a fucking lot of themes for an 83-minute movie. Number three, is the ending a bit too weird for its own good? I don't know. And is Barry exploding like the thing is awesome. But as you mentioned earlier, we have no idea why it happened. But still cool. So those are my hates.
So we're pretty much on the same page. What did you say about the narrative? Did you say it was narratively what?
I said it lacked the thematically rich nature of the film came at the cost of narrative clarity.
Clarity. So I changed your word. I wrote the narrative incoherence. So
Yeah, yeah,
basically, as the film descends into the hallucination and the body horror stuff, and you get the line between reality and delusion blurring. I know it's intentional, but it can leave you feeling disoriented and frustrated because there's a lack of a clear narrative thread. So I
yeah,
just
totally.
think, yeah. Number two, then. So the themes, the heavy-handed messaging.
Mhm.
It's just like it just sometimes it feels like you're being hit by a sledgehammer. The metaphor of media is a literal infection, is bold, but not exactly nuanced.
Well, like we said,
I use the
like
thesaurus for that, by the way.
well, it's good stuff. But the moment which really caught my attention in terms of just being utterly unsubtle was when the dick gun comes through the TV and shoots him. I'm like, all right, we get it. Technology bad, eroticism, all these things. Visually, it's a cool moment, but again, like you say, thematically heavy-handed for sure.
And number three, then the gratuitous and sexual violence and sorry, the gratuitous violence and the sexual content. Sometimes it just feels like it's overshadowing the message. They're
Mhm.
concentrating more on that, and they have five messages they want to give out, so maybe concentrate a bit more on that.
Well,
So
that's
even
a
though I
perfect
said I
example of
love
that. Is
the effect, sometimes it just feels like it's just
Well, a perfect
overshadowing
example
everything else.
of that was what you said earlier, was like the Debbie Harry thing. Like thematically, she's an interesting part of the film, but she doesn't get that narrative journey to go on at all. She's
Yeah,
just kind of abandoned. She just becomes this kind of stand-in for the thematics that he's trying to represent on screen. But it just kind of, in terms of her going anywhere narratively as a character, that's just completely abandoned. So yeah, I think it kind of makes sense for the rest of the film.
that'll lead us into making a change.
Well, I was going to say alternative titles first.
Oh, alternative title. Sorry, yeah, I jumped the gun a lot there, didn't I?
Did like by like 4 sections. Jesus Christ.
Fucking hell. Right. So what do we got here? Argentina was invaded bodies.
It's okay.
Brazil was Videodrome, the video syndrome.
That's far too much.
Uh, Canada was zone killer.
Nope.
Finland, Videodrome, weapons of perdition. Mexico was invaded bodies.
No.
Uh,
Sounds like an alien film, doesn't it? Again.
I gotta go for the translation on this. I know it's Poland, Videodrome.
Video. Jesus Christ.
Uh,
Maybe that makes sense in Poland, but yes, fair enough.
Portugal, mind blowing experience.
No.
Taiwan, documentary photography murder case.
I mean, sure, I guess.
And finally, Vietnam, dark forces.
That's terrible. Yeah, I think we can all agree this is one of the cases where Videodrome is the best of the bunch. And it
Yeah.
is a great title. It is an awesome. I was actually wondering, like, going into it, because again, I know so little about this film. I was like, I wonder what Videodrome is in reference to. But anyway, great title. Any facts for this movie?
Yep. So three different endings were filmed. The ending used in the film was James Wood's idea. So he wanted to shoot himself.
Fair enough.
Uh, David Cronenberg had to double for James Woods for the scene in which Max Wren has a helmet put on him because they were
That kind of
both
works. They've
afraid.
got similar. They got similar
Yeah.
shaped heads.
Yeah. They were both afraid that they were going to be electrocuted by it. So David Cronenberg bit the bullet for that one.
It's a hell of a get up. That like the actual. Again, I thought that was going to play a bigger part when they put
Yeah.
the helmet on him and stuff. But then it just kind of like comes and goes. Fair enough.
Uh, what do we have here? I had one. Oh, the majority of the trailer was created with a Commodore 64.
Awesome. My first ever console or
Yeah.
home computer, whatever you want to call them.
Andy Warhol called the movie A Clockwork Orange of the 1980s.
Fair enough. He looks like he could be in this film as well. Maybe like in my head, I'm like they look like they could be brothers, Andy Warhol and David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
They just look kind of similar.
What else have we got here? The film suffered from cuts theatrically due to a studio executive who disliked sex toys and ratings problems with the MPAA. All of the cut footage was restored for the unrated video release. Now, I'm not too sure if I watched the unrated.
Surely not. There's no way I'm watching like the 83-minute version is the unrated version. There has to be, I assume there has to be a longer version. So
Included among the 1001 movies you must see before you die.
mm-hmm.
David
Although saying
Cronenberg.
that, I watched this on Sky Movies, and Sky Movies has a weird kind of like what was it? Blade Runner was on Sky Movies, and I just randomly thought, I'll just put it on. Sure, I
Yeah.
hadn't watched Blade Runner before. I'll just watch like 20 minutes of it because it's a fucking amazing film. And it was the one with the narration. And I was like, why the fuck would you pick the theatrical version of Blade Runner? I think everyone's just decided the theatrical version is bullshit. Even the executives didn't like it when it came out. They're the ones who asked for the voiceover for it to make sense, and then went, it doesn't work. And like, yeah, we fucking know. So the director's cut, the ultimate cut, all these different cuts have just become the kind of de facto versions of Blade Runner. But they're showing the goddamn the original theatrical cut. It's absolute travesty. So I don't know if there's, and I should know, I guess, because I'm doing a podcast, if there's like 3 different versions of this. But it sounds like we're both watching the 83-minute version.
Yeah. David Cronenberg turned down the offer to make Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, in order
Return
to
of the
make
Jedi,
this
yeah.
film. Yeah.
There was a lot of
James.
directors attached to Return of the Jedi. It was a bizarre one.
James Woods was very keen to work with David Cronenberg, having been a big admirer of Rabid and Shivers, both
Mhm.
75 and 77, respectively. David Cronenberg's original title for the film was Network of Blood.
That's not bad.
No.
Better than Vietnam.
Rick Baker's original concept for Max's flesh gun included lips and foreskin, but David Cronenberg felt this was simply too graphic.
We got to draw a line somewhere, apparently, and it's foreskin, especially in America. They get about foreskin in America.
Uh, it is revealed in the movie that once you have seen the Videodrome signal, that the brain tumor begins to form and you begin to hallucinate. Max sees the video signal early on in the movie, so it could be implied that most of the movie is Max hallucinating. Taking it one step farther, the first thing the audience sees is the Videodrome signal. Therefore, it has already affected the audience, and the entire movie is the viewer's hallucination.
That's really interesting, and it's something we didn't mention when we were covering the movie proper. But there is you can make a strong argument that most of this film just doesn't happen. It's just all in his head, and even right towards the end, it's when he goes to the ship and just before he shoots himself, he actually takes his right hand and rubs it over his face, and there's nothing wrong with his hand. And then a minute later, when he goes to shoot himself, he's got the gun, gross hand kind of thing. So there's a strong argument that there are at least large parts of this film which are completely fabricated by Max. But yeah, I think that's part of the fun.
So two more now. So most of the major characters in the film make their first appearance on a television screen.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really clock that, but that's clever.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And finally, as a foreshadowing of his involvement with Barry Convex's plan to use Videodrome to rid America of social decay, Harlan never actually watches the footage when it's on. He's always facing away from the television set, concentrating on something else.
Crafty bastard.
Yeah.
Crafty bastard. All that Patron stuff like he's your buddy.
Yeah.
Nasty piece of work. Well, he did blow up, so he got his comeuppance. Hug to the Future, so this where they asked the question, remake, sequel, Let It Die, or Leave Well Alone. Well, I've already answered this earlier. Depressingly perfect time for a remake. It was very zeitgeisty in 1983, and on a thematic level, feels very much the same way in 2025. Like I said, just use AI and social media instead of TV and video. That line I mentioned earlier, we live in an overstimulated time. We crave stimulation for its own sake. I still can't believe that was in a movie in 1983. But yeah, Videodrome in 2025, make no mistake, it's not going to happen, but it totally makes sense.
Yeah, we're in the right time for a remake of this because, as you said, you could change it to social media, and everyone has a TV screen now, wherever they are in their pocket and everything. It'd be the perfect time to do it, but it's never going to be done. But if we were going to, yeah, for once, I would say a remake of this would work.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not even sure if I need it to happen, but it would make sense. Like I said, I don't have any massive attachments to this film. I only watched it for the first time, and to one extent, it's very much a 1983 movie. But yeah, the themes, the narrative, all that jazz, you could just kind of shift it so easily to 2025. It would only take some minor changes, but yeah, we'll go with do a remake. Make a change. We finally got there, Rob. So this is where if you could make one change to make the movie better, I'll let you go first, given that you already have an idea of what it is.
Yeah, so for me, it's basically developing Nicky Brand's character more fully. I just want to give it a greater agency and screen presence because it just feels like half the time it's just his hallucinations. It could be the whole thing is his hallucinations because he's watched Videodrome before he actually meets her. So yeah.
That's fair enough. I mean, it's just kind of similar, but it's a bit more wide-ranging, I suppose. It's just some of the plot. There's some of the plot. It's basically the plot surrounding Oblivion, Cathode, Barry Convex, and Spectacular Optical. It's just all a bit. I'm not sure if it's ambiguous so much as just it's just not given enough time to kind of explain itself. So it's like I watch it and go, oh, this is kind of incredibly ambiguous in and of itself in any particular moment. It just kind of jumps around so quickly that I'm never quite sure what's happening. And once you kind of stop and think about it, do a bit of it, okay, it just about hangs together. But yeah, I just think a few additional scenes just to explain the world to an extent, because it's not a matter of removing ambiguity. As I said, I don't think he's trying to be ambiguous. The narrative is there if you can find it amongst all the thematic richness and body horror and all that nonsense. It's just there's not enough of it to really hang together, sadly. So that'd be my change. As for video games, I mean, there wasn't a video game. I guess in 1983, it would have been on the Atari 2600. What the
or
fuck?
The Commodore 64, which they made.
Or the Commodore 64, which would have been a shame. But in terms of a kind of tonal consistency, I'd probably go for Grasshopper Manufacture and Goichi Suda of No More Heroes, Killer 7, and most relevant Shadows of the Damned, which has like weird guns and stuff. I think he would
Yeah.
do the kind of movie probably justice. That or something wonderfully janky like Deadly Premonition by Access Games. Like that's basically the unofficial Twin Peaks game. And I feel like something with a similar budget, you could almost make like an unofficial Videodrome game in the same manner. So I go for
Yeah.
one of those.
So I go for like the red-headed stepchild, the three games pushed into one. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you think of like Manhunt, where you
Mm-hmm.
had the it's because that makes you the star of your own snuff film, doesn't it? Where it's like the
Yeah,
media
yeah.
watching you and everything like that. Control that has
Oh, I
like
love that game.
yeah,
Love
but
it.
that's got the reality distortion and
Mm-hmm.
media like the media aligning with the distortion and things like that. And then obviously fucking Silent Hill, dude. Like Silent Hill just
Yeah.
makes it
I
great.
actually
So
think you're right with like because I love Remedy anyway, and they may be the only company who would be crazy enough to actually do it because
yeah,
they just do their own thing and their games are weird, and because they're not publicly traded, they're just like we run our own company, we make our own decisions, and they can kind of get into that emphasis of like we just want to make enough money. Well, obviously, they want to make all the money, but their emphasis can just be on, well, we make enough money to keep the lights on, to keep everyone paid, and to keep
yeah.
everyone working. It's not like, oh, we're publicly traded, so we keep having to have more and more growth, blah, blah, blah. So if they can get enough people on board and keep the kind of production budget down, they're like, they could make a fucking Videodrome game, and it would be awesome because Remedy make like the best video games. It would like is not a world where like Alan Wake 3 has like a Videodrome 2 DLC? Like it
Oh,
could
I mean,
totally
it could
happen.
be. Yeah,
Oh man,
I haven't played the
Alan Wake 2.
Alan Wake 2 yet. I really
Oh,
need to.
dude, it's fucking I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm like the original Alan Wake was one of my favorite games of the 360 generation.
Yeah,
And it is, like when you're like, oh, I'd love it if there was an Alan Wake sequel, but you just don't think it's going to happen. Not only did it happen, but it's so fucking triple A. It's
yeah,
like they've just taken the original idea, the gameplay's even better, and the visuals are ungoddamn believable. And as a Stephen King fan, I mean, you absolutely owe it to yourself. I've actually been putting off doing the DLC because I'm just going to wait for like a big sale, not because I'm like cheap out, but because like it's quite a long game, Alan Wake 2.
yeah.
And like you finish it and you like I felt like I had my fill, and I feel like maybe like 6 months from now I'll go back to the DLC and I'll be like, oh yeah, I've got fucking amazing this world is. But yeah, if there's one thing you take out of this podcast is that you should go away and play Alan Wake 2. It's the bomb.
Oh, absolutely. I want to. I just want to wait for it to come down in price. So I'm being cheap. I am.
That's fair enough. Well, you can buy the ultimate the kind of game of the year version now with all the DLC
Okay.
and stuff as well. So it's something I'm just doing a sales pitch for Alan Wake 2. And if
Yeah.
ever there was a game I was going to do a sales pitch for, it's Alan Wake 2.
I don't want
Best
to
and
be.
worst. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I don't want to be that person because every time I've gone out and bought a game, literally like a week or so later, it's come onto the PS Plus available games.
That's one of the
So
issues, isn't it? There's always
yeah,
the danger, like, oh, am I going to buy this? Especially because I have Game Pass, and Game Pass is like unbelievably good. But it has made me like rethink my way of purchasing games. I'm just like, God, so many games end up on Game Pass now.
yeah.
Do I just wait it out? But yeah. I mean, if ever there was a company I want to support, it's Remedy. So I don't like. I was like, I'm happy buying the game at full price. But yeah, it's one of those like when you get a chance, especially as you're a fan of like Uncharted and stuff. That's a
Oh
similar
yeah,
vibe, but
yeah.
yeah, great stuff. Sorry, best and worst of IMDb. So this is where we pick a random 10-star and 1-star review for this film. Has it got more than 100 reviews?
Well, you got to tell me how many reviews has it got?
120.
384.
Oof, much more than I expected.
Yeah,
Surprisingly high. Of those 10-star reviews, 71.
69.
Oh, pretty close. It had to be 69. This film is filth. It's
Yeah.
filth. God damn it.
Right. So written in 2003, titled "A Highly Creepy and Original Movie." James Woods plays a scuzzy, low-life TV producer, the kind of character he plays exceptionally well, and that you've come to love from prior performances in films like Salvador, who gets hooked on watching a pirate snuff film channel, but soon he discovers everything is not as it seems to be, and that the transmission wasn't broadcast at all, but actually a tape which brainwashes him into acts of self-mutilation on his body. Soon finds that he can hardly even control himself or his body. A great first half with terrific performances from the three leads. Steps up a gear or two in the second half, A highly creepy and original movie that just gets weirder and weirder. Highly recommended. Peter. He even signed it.
Oh, even signed off Peter. That was good because I thought it was going to be one of those reviews where it's basically just a synopsis or a complete retelling of the movie, which we've kind of
Yeah.
picked randomly a few times. But you got there eventually. I quite like the review. If anything, he was more succinct than we were, put it that way. But yeah, I agree with a lot of that. So I think it's fair enough. But the one star one's going to be interesting because I suspect a lot of people fucking hate this film, especially if you don't know what you're getting into.
Not as many as 69. I'll give you that
No,
hint.
no, 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 no. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be 32 one-star
It's
reviews.
10. 10 one
10, I thought it
stars.
might have been a
Yeah.
bit more. Well, it might be a bit more.
Right. So this was written in 2015, titled Terrible, Just Terrible. I saw this film in the theater when it first ran. I don't remember why I decided to pay admission for it, but I've regretted it ever since. I am now writing a review of the movie because earlier today I was in a conversation with someone where we were discussing the worst movies that were made with a decent sized budget. I have thought of this question before. My number one movie fitting this qualification is Videodrome. It truly stinks. I remember after the first half hour of the film, I considered leaving the theatre and doing anything else, but I thought that as punishment for my moment of stupidity, I should stay until the end credits. So painfully, I watched the whole film. It really blows. It truly sucks. They could have given the money. I could have given the money they put into the movie to UNICEF or the National Kidney Foundation, but no, they made a
Fucking hell.
bad movie. It happens. I mean, why the Kidney Foundation?
I was thinking why he felt the need to say it blows and sucks. It reminded me of I was rewatching Hot Tub Time Machines, and he's showing the graffiti he wrote in like 1985. So he's like, he sucks cocks and dicks. It's just like, all right, it's dumb, but it's kind of funny. But yeah, sucks
He
and
watched this
blows.
film in 1983, and then
Mhm.
32 years later, he writes a review.
And he still regrets it to this day. I'm like, dude, man, the tickets probably would cost like $3, and it was 83 minutes long. It's like one of those films where you commit to watch and you suddenly realize, like, don't get me wrong, it's a good film. But we started watching Dancer in the Dark, Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark, without knowing what it was. We're like, oh, a
Okay.
musical with Bjork. It's 3 hours long and it is the most depressing film you've ever seen. Yes, it's also a musical, and the ending is so grim. It's weird because I don't regret watching because it is fundamentally a good film. Being like halfway through, you're just like, wait, how long is this film and how fucking depressing is this going to get? Jesus Christ. But yeah, the fact that he remembers it 30 years later, to the point where just all of a sudden he just had to get it off his chest and write a review. Yeah, Jesus, some
You
people are
know?
really impacted by these movies, which brings
Yeah.
us to our own recommend ratings and recommendations. So I'm not going for a 10-star review. I'm not going for a 1-star review. I thought this was a really good film. It is messy. You can pick holes in it, but it's utterly unique and strangely compelling. So I'm giving it a 4, but I'm not recommending it. I tell a lie. I recommended it to one person, but he's like a total cinephile, and I think he'd be into it. I am not telling most people to watch this fucking film. There's just no way. But I really enjoyed myself, so it's a 4 and a no.
So yeah, I had a good time with it as well, but I feel it's more of a 3 than a 4. I just think there are some things that let it down a bit, but there are things that rescue it. So yeah, so it's definitely just a 3. But same as you, I don't know many people that wouldn't have already seen it. Like frequent collaborator Dave, I told him we were doing Videodrome. He said I fucking love that movie, so he's seen it a few times.
Yeah, yeah.
He's the kind of person, not trying to attack his character in any way, shape, or form, who, if I knew he hadn't seen it, would go, you like weird stomach vaginas? You go ahead and watch this film. Like but
Well,
in regards to Joe Public, as it were, no, I'm not recommending this film.
yeah, because even if you were just like most people who aren't like, proper cinephiles, and that sounds like such a doozy term, but you know what I mean? Don't watch like a lot of movies
Yeah,
necessarily and don't, can't kind of list off directors, blah, blah. Most people, the only chance they're really going to know David Cronenberg is probably from The Fly. And of course, that is gross, but it's a much more mainstream movie than this is. This is such an oddball movie in so many
yeah,
respects. There's going to be somebody who's like, oh, I watched Decent Promises. I really like that film. I heard he did this film called Videodrome with James Woods. Completely different, utterly different, and a much tougher sell. As we said at the top of the podcast, when you kind of read that this movie bombed at the box office, you're like, oh, yeah, yeah. And then you read that it became a cult classic. You're like, oh, yeah, yeah. This
yeah,
ticks all those fucking boxes, but it's certainly not for everyone. It's not the kind of movie, when I think of this, the recommendation, like the perfect example is like like an entertaining 4-star movie, but the kind you would see on ITV2 at 8 p.m. You are not seeing this movie on ITV2 at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday.
no, not
It's
at all.
not fucking happening. It'll be Hot Fuzz. It's always Hot Fuzz, which is fine because Hot Fuzz is fucking amazing. But yeah, not Videodrome. All right, so that has been 1983's Videodrome, quite the movie, and a couple of strange movies back to back after Dead Heat. It is your choice for next week, sir. What are we going for?
Right. So we're actually we have an official season coming up. We have the American sports season because we're both big American sports films fans. Yeah,
Films
that's a
fans, yeah.
sentence. So what we're gonna do is we've already done the Wheel of Judgment. It tells each of us which film which sport, sorry, we choose.
Mhm.
So you already know I had basketball for next season. Next season, I had basketball for next week. So I'm gonna give you 1986.
1986,
Yeah,
and this is a basketball movie.
it's a basketball movie.
So just to be clear, we're basically we're going to cover the four major what we think of as US sports. So there's going to be a basketball movie, an American football movie, ice hockey film, and a baseball movie, and a football film. Sorry, a basketball movie from 1986.
Yep.
Hoosiers.
Hughes, well done.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
that's a fucking dude. That is such a great shout because Hoosiers is a complete blank spot. And when I say a blank spot, I don't mean it's just one of those films I hadn't seen. I'm not convinced I knew. Like I vaguely was aware of the term Hoosiers, and I knew Gene Hackman was in it. I didn't know shit about it, and in the last 6 months, for some odd reason, it's just totally come up on my radar. And I was like,
But yeah, mine too.
And this all of a sudden, I keep hearing it. It's fucking amazing.
This is mine too. This is why I've been waiting for this season because I'm glad I got basketball because it was either this or fucking Coach Carter. There's not really many basketball films that you're going to be able to pull out.
White Men Can't Jump.
White Man Can't Jump. I see more as a comedy than an actual basketball. I love White Man Can't Jump, but
it's totally a basketball film too.
Yeah.
Above the Rim. Oh, that was a classic as well.
Above the Rim. Fucking hell.
I'm not sure if we're quite black
let's go
to
basketball diary, shall we? The reason why I think it missed us as well, Hoosiers, is because even though it shouldn't really miss us if we like this, it was actually called Best Shot in the UK.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, because not, and I think over most of Europe, because Hoosiers is a term in Indiana, isn't it? From where
I have no idea what Hoosiers means.
Yeah, so I did Google it. Well, what did I get here?
You have to Google it now. We can't wait until next week. I have to know what Hoosiers means.
Yeah, so Hoosiers was released under the title Best Shot in some international markets, particularly in the UK. The change was likely made because the term Hoosiers, a nickname for people from Indiana, might not have resonated or made sense to audience unfamiliar with American regional slang.
Well, I wouldn't have. I have no idea what Hoosiers means.
And for our American listeners, are we saying that right as well? I don't know if it's Hoosiers or Hoosiers or
Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Hoosiers. Robert Logiers.
There's too many O's.
That's an actor.
Yeah,
I just want to say Robert Loggia.
Robert Loggia.
That's a fun name. Again.
I watched him in because I know you're not going to pick it because I've got NFL. I watched Necessary Roughness with Scott Bakula, when he goes back to college as a 34-year-old man, and they were calling him old. Well, fuck me, dude. I'm 42.
So
Robert Loggia was in that. Yeah.
Robert Loggia. Yeah, Jesus Christ, I hadn't thought about that movie for ages. No, I probably wouldn't have picked that. But there's so many great. Whatever you might say about American sports, they just do the best movies. Like there's never been many. Well, has there been any good football movies? And when I say football movies, I mean soccer movies. To separate it from American football, as it were. I can't think. I'm not having Escape to Glory. That film fucking blows. They did that trilogy of movies where that kid went to Newcastle and then what's that?
Goal.
They were ass. So is there a good bend like Beckham? People have a soft spot for. It's okay, but I wouldn't call it a classic.
The Taika Waititi one has done quite well, like critically. I think was Next Goal Wins with Michael Fassbender. I haven't seen it, but
it's I'd be interested to see because it's harder to like represent the sport on screen. That's one of the great things about American sports. They're so often about moments. You can break it down. Like all of a sudden, even if you don't really get the sport, if it's American football, you're on the 1 yard line. There's 1 second left. It's like, okay, I get it. They've got to get over the line. It's the last minute of the game. You've got the ball, the game winning shot. Baseball, you hit the home. Is there anything more iconic than Robert Redford hitting that fucking home run in The Natural? I don't think there is. Like, it's one of the most iconic sports scenes of all time. It doesn't matter if you're into baseball. You watch it, you're like, that's fucking dope. Because you get it on that sporting level.
With football, and I'm not calling it the American name, it's football. with football, you don't do any better than Ted Lasso anyway. Ted Lasso is perfect for the football and drama outside of football. So
that was one of the surprising things about that show, because you hear it's like an American coach coming in and it's like, oh, this is going to be a shocking representation of football. But like, they actually do a pretty decent job on that show.
Yeah.
They do a surprisingly decent job, but there aren't many cinematic
Well,
examples.
I will say,
there's one movie where it's a documentary, and basically the camera just follows around Zinedine Zidane, and you're not capturing the game, you're just capturing his individual brilliance, but it's not a movie in the same way, blah, blah, blah. But
I will say, we already know I've got NFL. You are going to love my NFL pick because I know you're a fan. So when I get that one out,
awesome. Well, I've got like a few in my head that I get like a pick. Like one of my friends was big on the idea. It's like, oh, you're going to do Varsity Blues, right? I was like, it's not my choice. It's not my choice. That movie played like a surprisingly big part in my relative youth. Like the Foo Fighters plays, and it was, again, like we mentioned, this film was very zeitgeisty. That was zeitgeisty in a very different way in terms of like the cast and everything. It feels like an early 2000s film.
All the 40-year-olds playing 18-year-olds. You can tell your friend, or I can tell your friend right now, that's not my pick. We will get to Varsity Blues.
We will get to like Varsity Blues is one of those films we might just randomly do one week. Like we don't need a sports season, but there you go. There's a hint. It's not Varsity Blues. They're like, but I want. There's a lot of great football movies, so it's fine.
Hoosiers or best shot or whatever we call it. That's what's next week for us. So good shout, mate. You got it on the year. You actually got the year.
Well, like you said, it was like when you said it, I was like, fuck, I can't even think of a basketball movie from the 80s. And then I was like, oh, Hoosiers, man. It's just been it's like you said, it's bizarre that in the last 6 months, it's just kind of made its way into my life. And I just dude, I have to watch this film because it's really well regarded. Like it's well reviewed.
I've been putting it off.
I really have to see this.
And this is the first time I've seen it as well, but I've been putting it off for ages.
I put off
so we could cover it on this podcast. Yeah.
I actually got as far as I can't remember if it was on like Amazon Prime or something.
It's on Prime.
Very recently. It's on Prime. I clicked on it and I was like, I've got to watch this film. I was just like, oh no, we might end up doing this for the US sports scene. So I stopped it as well.
I pressed play. The credits come on, and I thought, no, we gotta wait, dude. We gotta wait. So yeah, no, I waited. So I'm looking forward to doing it. Yeah,
great shout, great choice. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, anything else to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, really quickly, because I know actually for once you've got to go. Mm-hmm. So we just got 2 messages off. Well, we've had a couple of messages, but I got to say these 2 have a couple of listeners because it basically just calls me out for not getting names right. Craig Fox sent us a message saying Vincent Price was not in Gremlins 2. You guys were thinking of Christopher Lee playing the scientist. So when we were talking about Red Heat, we said Vincent Price, but it was actually Christopher Lee. So
there we go. And I remember saying at the time, I was like, was it Vincent Price? And then we doubled down.
I was questioning as well, but we moved on. So I was questioning in my head, but I didn't think I'd get called out. How wrong was I? And then Ben Morris as well messaged us and said, just finished listening to the Dead Heat episode. And you mentioned, in fact, that Bernard Manning was being considered for the film. Rob then mentioned that he was in Doctor Who playing Catherine Tate's granddad. I think you're referring to Bernard Cribbins, who played that part, not Bernard Manning. But they're both called Bernard, so I guess it can get confusing. Not really, I'm just an idiot.
I would usually enjoy this moment because I had nothing to do with that. I remember even at the time I was like, I have no idea because I don't watch Doctor Who, but because I literally just a moment ago said that, David Bowie was in Cat People, so I've got a leg to stand on. So if anything, you've saved me from this next week, basically. So I guess I should thank you, I suppose.
But to double down as well, Ben actually sent a picture of Bernard Cribbins and Bernard Manning just to go, 2 different people.
Just so you're sure. So no, dude, you fucked it. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure on the picture it showed that day, like Manning was actually dead by time they were doing. So okay, we get it. Fair enough. But hey, we got to be called out on these things either by each other or by listeners. So
absolutely, mate. Absolutely,
we can't let these things slide. I've been Liam. He's been Rob. You have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. See you next week, guys. Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
You